Hello, everyone, and hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing all right. A little flustered. The computer wouldn't do what it was supposed to do, but I'm here and I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. And yeah, so if we do have any technical delays or anything, we'll just deal with it as we go. And being that we're talking about reacting and responding, how about we just respond to that instead of react to it? That'd be fun.
As I'm reacting to the fear of not being on time and what will she think and all of this stuff, which I know we all go through, right? When we're late or whatever. It's just like a natural kind of reaction where we just kind of, I hope it's gonna be okay. And really, what's
Yeah.
the big deal if I'm 5 minutes late, other than I don't want to disappoint, right?
Yeah, and that's that emotion, isn't it? Which is why I wanted to, I thought this would be a fun topic for today because over the last 2 weeks, I've had some interesting things, and I'm sure you have had as well. Because when we think back, well, I find that when you and I talk about what topic are we going to do, it's hilarious because I go, oh, look, there's an example there and there and there and there and there. As soon as I look through the filter of that topic, I can see it everywhere. So I'm certain you'll have some stories about reacting and
And I
responding.
don't know if you've had this experience or not. It just seems like thematically, certain things will show up that make sense for, like, when I do my weekly call with my ladies, it's always based on the theme of what's showing up in my life, and typically it's something that they can relate to as well. So it just seems to always be like that, whether it's client calls or whatever. There just seems to be, this is the theme that's active in my life, and I've attracted in someone who's going through something similar, or at least in a way that they can see it from that lens.
Oh, completely. The number of times that I go, oh, now that you mention that, I've got a really cute, funny story from just 2 days ago. Let me tell you about this. How does that relate?
Yeah, exactly like that. So why don't you tell me about what happened to you recently, because this is the inspiration came from you.
It did. So the story that inspired this topic was, now I know the
What's
world
our
is
what's
still
our topic?
reacting and responding.
Perfect. Okay, good. Just want to throw it out there as like a headline. Reacting and responding.
So as we are all living with a pandemic, that's fantastic. But I do find that Australia is not living with it as intensely as the rest of the world. And so when there is just one simple case in our lovely city, everyone goes into meltdown. And there was a bit of that went on the weekend. So the shortish story of this was my daughter was at a particular shopping centre, and there was one person that had come through that particular shopping centre that had COVID. And so the big announcements, anyone who was at that shopping centre between 4 and 4:30, you now have to isolate. And we didn't find out about that until 5 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And my daughter rang me because she was at the boyfriend's and said, I don't know what to do. I've contacted Queensland Health, that's our local government area, and I don't know. I've told them that I was at that shopping centre, and she was in tears. So we said, well, how about you finish your dinner, enjoy your dinner. It was her birthday. That was the other
Wow.
little element in this.
Happy birthday. Nice little gift there, right?
Yeah. And so we said, enjoy your dinner. There's nothing more you can do, but find your way home. And she's only 10 minutes from home. So between that time of that phone call and when she got home, I can tell you that my husband and I had a number of reactions to this.
Do tell.
We knew that her birthday was the following day, and I had actually taken time out from work to take her to the movies and go shopping with her because that was a result of what I was giving to her for her birthday. And suddenly I was like, oh no, I can't do that. What are we going to do? And then it was, oh, so now we have to sanitize everything. What do we need to sanitize? How do we manage with her in the house? And she's got to isolate, but now what do we do? Do I have to cancel all my clients for the next 2 weeks? Who's coming in? And then it was hubby. He's supposed to be traveling 4 hours away from the city into another state. What does he do? Does he ring his boss now and let him know? Or does he wait until Monday? Or how do we? Oh my God, the questions did not stop. So we decided that we didn't have all the answers, but we were, in that period of time, we actually just verbalized a lot of questions without any answers. And the other element for me was I was reacting as a mum going, I don't want my 22-year-old to not enjoy her birthday. I absolutely hate it when my daughter doesn't get to have her world being amazing and feeling okay in it. And that was actually most of my reaction. That was behind what most
So
of
if
it.
this hadn't been a birthday time, would you have, what might your reaction have been?
I would have gone into practical mode, but I don't think I would have had as many emotions, because I was actually more devastated on her behalf, because I was making up all these scenarios in my head about all of these
I've got
things.
several threads that I want to pull on right now, and that's one of them.
So so it was really this constant. I had gone into survival mode in that half an hour. What we did then is, when she got home, we were all very calm, and we did apply the practical mode. Now, 24 hours later, we actually got notification that she was nowhere near the one person that had come into that shopping centre. So she was cleared and she no longer had to isolate.
Okay.
So that was technically came through on her birthday, because her birthday was on the Monday. So she got that notification at 5:30 on Monday afternoon. And so all was suddenly within a 30-second window from when she received the text message to when I received the information. Oh, all is normal again in the world. And we could just keep going.
It just goes to show the story that we'll project in our head and project out there, that has way more color and worry and potential end of the world kind of scenarios, that more often than not, and more likely than not, are not even close to the reality.
Well, this is why I thought it was a great example of sharing, because that 24 hours pretty much did my head in. And I think you're right, that perceived, the made up imagination that went wild in me was no help whatsoever. Like, it did not effectively contribute to anything other than my stress levels. And you could argue that was an effective way to increase my stress levels.
Right.
But other than that, I don't know that it was actually very effective. And what I also noticed is that I was really grateful that all day I didn't have anything to do, because I couldn't show up for anyone else. And whether you're running a business or you need to show up for your family or the job, like, my whole attention and my energy and my focus had moved completely to my daughter and managing the house, because I had to now make her lunch and get her a drink and then make sure that she'd washed her hands, because now she'd picked up that, or she'd walked past the table and touched the chair, or, oh my God.
So, I mean, this speaks a lot to, is it Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So you've got like your base security stuff that needs to happen, and then everything else builds on top of that into like some sort of normalcy and presence, right? And without those basic needs being taken care of, you're really destabilized, right?
Absolutely.
So I got to make sure that this is sanitized and that's clean and this is taken care of, because we can't let this become a thing. Right?
Yeah, totally. And yet it had this damaging effect on my sleep pattern that Sunday night. And that kind of kicked in over onto the Monday, but I managed to rectify that by the Tuesday evening. So that was okay. But it was such a heightened micro example of what survival mode does to our reactions and our capacity to respond,
And your capacity to be present.
which was non-existent. And yet, in my head, I justified that I was present for her. But I'm not convinced that I was.
Mm.
So that was the interesting little mindset that a few days later I reflected on, because I justified that I was completely present for her because I was sanitizing everything and I was making sure she was okay. But I was actually still in reactive mode.
For sure.
I just thought it was a great example of how we can easily make sense of our reactions and continue to do it and still make them okay, when really, are they being effective, and what are the ramifications and the consequences of staying in that reactive space?
And what are the consequences? What were the consequences for you?
Lack of sleep. My stress levels are lowered, but I'm finding that they're more heightened still this week. So I'm on higher alert still. So I haven't quite come down into what I would say is my normal space. Now, when I'm working with clients, I'm moving into that space, but when I walk back in the house, there's still incidences that are occurring that I'm just like, oh, wow, my little fight or flight mode, the button is like ready. It's ready to turn back on. And to try and live in that and exist in that is tiring.
You know, that reminds me of we came home from my parents' place. It's about an 8-hour drive, and we spent the last 3 hours in a tornado warning, and tornadoes actually touching down around us. It 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 was insane. Like I came when we got home, and because we're watching like clouds and funnel clouds, and that looks crazy and that looks weird. We were in fight or flight for literally hours, clutching the steering wheel and just being on high alert for. I mean, I'm pretty sure I slept like a baby when we actually got home. But and then we like watched where all the tornadoes touched down over the course of that day, and we were literally in the zone the entire time. So I can relate to um, the heightened version of that, because that's what it felt like. Every 2 minutes there was another alert, and the clouds were weird and pulling off the road and trying to decide, is this what, should we go in this direction or not go in this direction? Do we go home? But the calmer I was, the more I knew what I needed to do.
Yeah.
Right. My
Yeah.
wife was almost hysterical on how scared she was. I was scared but calmer and able to tap into more of my intuition of what we needed to do. I'm like, no, we're good on this direction. We're good on this course for at least the next 20 minutes, and it's better than standing still. So let's keep going.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Getting to that calm space where you can turn off that fight or flight. What I find, and I don't know if it's just me, it's just, I'm going to speak it from my own experience. And I do have a bit of history of living in survival mode. So it's a bit of a default for me. If I go there, then it's almost like it could be a comfort zone because I've existed in it. You know, for the first 25 years of my life, I pretty much existed in it. So it's like a going home, which is ironic. So I can tend to go there a bit more than others, or stay there a little bit longer than others. But I find that if the sooner I can remove the emotion, the sooner I can get into being more expansive. And so that's actually what I keep doing when I've been going into the survival mode, or I've been hearing the high alert going off. Like, it's like a little alarm in my head. Oh, what is that over there? Oh, do I have to pay attention to it? It's like this little alarm is expanding my energy.
Tell me more about that.
So when our energy goes into any kind of reactiveness, what we do is we contract our energy because we want to feel protected. So we essentially close down, and if I physically, I could curl up in a ball and just be there for a while, that would be awesome. Except of course that's not actually a thing, but that's what the energy is doing, is it's just retracting in. And so by consciously moving it out, by choosing to expand the energy, I have more space around me.
So tell me what that feels like in your body when you contract. So just I'm thinking for people who are listening, going, how do I contract? How do I feel or know when I've contracted my energy in? What happens to you physiologically?
Lots of shallow breathing. So the shallow breath, it's really fast breathing. So this is another technique to use to stop that, is to do the deep breath. But shallow breathing is the thing that happens to me. And I have jerky reactions. So it's like I'm on tenterhooks. It's like if somebody comes around the corner and I'm not expecting it, it'll freak me out.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm kind of, my whole body is a lot more tense. I found I was sitting watching a show during one of the evenings, which is totally normal for me. And I got up and my body was stiff. It's, and that's not usual for me. I do Pilates and do exercise every morning. My body is quite flexible and quite fine, but my muscles were on more alert and more, I wouldn't say they had completely seized by any stretch, but they were contracting. That I was physically contracting as well as energetically.
I assumed you'd say what you said, but I guess why I'm saying it is so people can realize what happens to them. Because I get the shallow breathing happening, and I could just be listening to the news, and I'll notice that I'm getting shallow breathing because what I'm listening to is either upsetting or like fear-inducing and stuff like that. So like our bodies don't recognize the difference between a real present danger and a real present danger and a not present danger. I don't know how to say that. Like there's no wild animal chasing me down, which is the reason why you're on high alert. And in nature, that's what it would have been used for, right? Like you're there, you're on alert, you've seen it. Okay, so now what do I got to do? I got to make sure that I'm taking care of myself or my kids or whatever. And you being very protective of yourself and your family. So you're on that high alert to make sure that you survive.
Yep.
Right. But in our world, the things that are generally scaring us are oftentimes invisible because we're not surrounded by, maybe in Australia, maybe you are, but
we do have the odd crocodile and the kangaroo jumping down the street. No, we don't actually. Well, in some towns you do, but not in the cities.
Here I know I don't. Like there's nothing here for me to be scared of. But I'm still going through the similar physiological responses, shallow breath and freaking out and restricting myself and pinching myself or off or keeping myself small in order to protect myself from the
perceived
invisible virus or whatever, or my thoughts of the invisible virus.
Yes. And so that was what I found even a few days in, that I was still doing a bit of that even last night. So for those watching, I'm Friday morning here. So last night I found that I was still, when I got up off the chair, I was still in that tense mode, but I slept much better last night, and today was much easier on all of my muscles. So yeah, it does take a while, and then it can take some conscious, deliberate choices to move out of that survival mode, because once you get into it, it's one of those ones that you can justify to stay there. Mm. And I think there's many people in the world who have been forced into the survival mode and haven't worked out that they can actively choose to
feel a different way.
To feel a different way, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So yes, so that was the story that inspired this heading, this topic today.
I wasn't able to open up your page the way I wanted to, so I don't know if anything's come through question wise. Have you seen
I've
any?
been monitoring it. Let me just double check. Nothing at this stage, but that's okay. We might get some comments afterwards. After we've
I'm
been
not
on.
stressed. I just wondered if there's somebody there asking something that
Yeah, that we could.
maybe there is a tiger in the woods and they see it and they're freaking out. They want to know if that's okay. So go home, stay home.
Yeah, and then when I was thinking, okay, that's the story that inspired, then I actually thought beyond the reactiveness circumstance and realized that when I'm not caught up in survival mode, and just the week before, where I didn't have a COVID case scare,
Sure. Yeah.
I was actually really centered and grounded, and I went to present at for 50 managers in the hair industry, and I'd never met that group before, and I had to walk in partway through the conference and just get them to pay attention because I was the next speaker, and I had them for an hour and a half. And I was so able to be present in those moments where any other interruptions that occurred in that space, I had no emotional reaction to. I could just go with the flow. One of those examples was when I work with a group, I throw a beach ball around because it's easy to throw and it usually doesn't do any damage, except
Usually doesn't do any damage.
usually. Except when people refuse to catch the ball because they're going, oh, no, 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 it's not me. I don't want to catch the ball. And it knocked over in the, oh, no, I'm hitting the ball away activity. It knocked over a jug of water.
Okay.
And water went everywhere over the table. And I could see, I checked that that person was okay, and they'd actually they'd managed to not get any water on them, but it had gone over their book and the tablecloth and whatever. And it was like, oh, did you need another notebook? Here's one I prepared earlier. And I was able to just hand it to her and we were able to move on. And I was reflecting this morning going, that was a really interesting difference because I was actually emotionally present, but I wasn't clouded by survival emotions.
I was talking about, I think, an offshoot of what you're talking about here. I was referring to this as expectations without attachment to outcome. Right. So if you have an attachment to an outcome, and it doesn't go your way or as you pictured it, then you're going to be disappointed and upset or whatever, emotionally attached to that outcome. Whereas if you have an expectation that everything is working out and I'm going to roll with whatever shows up, there's nothing for you to hang your hat on at the other end, but everything will work out and everything is fine no matter what. So I've noticed myself when I've attached to an outcome, that's when I feel upset. Like if you put me in a bar, let's say when I was single and I go up to the girl and I get rejected, if I put all of my hopes and dreams that this is the woman I'm going to marry and she says no to the drink, I'm going to be devastated, right? But if
you'll never get married, like, and yeah.
Like I've already planned it out before I've even said hello. Exactly. So, but if I have no attachment to the outcome and they say, yeah, no, I'm not interested. Okay, great. I get to save my $10 on my that drink and I'll talk to somebody else. Like it's not a big deal, right?
Only $10. Geez, it's cheap over there.
I threw out a number that's actually higher than I would normally have paid. I don't go out and drink anymore, so $5 was like a normal thing before, and I don't know anymore. So whatever. Here, come to my house. I have a cooler full of beer. That was $2. Here you go. Anyways, so yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about with my group this week, was that expectation, and it kind of just reminded me of this topic too, of the reactions and non-reactions, because you generally don't react the same if you're not attached to the whatever happens at the other end of it.
Yeah, which is why when I look back on what I did on the Sunday, I was actually reacting to the plans I had in place to do with my daughter on her birthday, which we've just moved by a week. It's not like they're not going to happen. Like,
Sun is going to come up tomorrow. We're going to be okay.
We're still going to go and do some shopping, and we're still going to go and see a movie. Like, really? And the movie that she really wanted to see didn't come out until 2 days later anyway. Like, all of those kind of things just fall into place when, like you say, you move away from the attachment to what you have decided it's going to look like. Yeah. And that's one of the, I mean, I live and breathe that with my clients, and then every so often I get a reminder that I'm human, and I have to be reminded that I still occasionally do that.
You know what? I think that's actually the brilliance about the kind of work that we do with people is that, and I'm getting the sense that you do it now too, that we are human, we are normal, we do go through this, we've learned from it, and we generally stay in that sweet spot, but sometimes we fall out of that sweet spot. And it's okay that it happens because they're learning opportunities. And then we share that learning opportunity with the other people in the room.
And be able to, because I always feel it's in the bounce back that is where the growth, that affirms for me where my growth is. It used to take me years to bounce back. I don't know that I ever did bounce back until I started doing proper work. And now I can tell this story that's literally only 5 days old because I'm completely on the other side of it, where I could have easily stayed in it for a lot longer, and then everything would have been in survival mode constantly. So yeah. So that expansion of the energy is the thing that I do to move me out of that survival mode when I recognize that that's what I've gone into.
Yes, and sometimes that takes a bit of perspective or pulling back to see that you have gone into freak out mode, and you need to take a step back, relax, breathe, ask yourself some questions. I find asking myself questions about, what do I really know about this situation? And is this true? Like just asking myself like, okay, some of this is just like me adding story to it. I call this separating fact from story. So like if you have a contact lens that has color to it, like if it's blue, you see blue through it. But when it's against your eye, you really don't recognize that you're seeing blue. But when you pull it away, you can see the color and distortion. So if you can separate those two things apart, you have the facts of what actually transpired, and you have all of the meaning and color and whatever you've given it, and then you mashed them all together. But if you can pull them apart, then you can see things more clearly, and then ask yourself questions from that standpoint. And for me, that's kind of my opening up.
So I'd love to know
your restriction.
Yeah, I'd love to know your 3 questions that you would ask yourself to open.
Well, usually it's a reflection back. Like there's usually a trigger point for me where I'm like, whoa, you are not yourself right now. Why is that? What's going on? So I usually ask myself, when was the last time I felt okay? It's kind of like rewind the tape. I know it's an old analogy, but rewind the tape back to when was the last time I felt okay? And then ask myself, what happened at that moment? And what did I make it mean? I remember a scenario with my mother-in-law, and I was fine, I think, when this happened. And then she kind of snapped at me and told me, I asked her a question. She kind of like snapped and said, "Ian, use your head." And I immediately kind of went into like a rough, kind of pissy kind of mood. And I was in it for at least a couple of days. And then I was like, when I caught myself, I'm like, I don't understand why I'm so off of me. And then when I did the reflection back, I'm like, I was fine until that moment. And then when I reevaluated that scenario, I realized that I had made her reaction mean to me that I was some like lesser or dumb or whatever, small in some way. And when I was able to separate that out, it removed the emotional attachment to the scenario, and I was able to like move on. I was able to like recognize, is there anything for asking myself, do I have to do anything about this? And I didn't have to. She just had a rough day, and I just happened to be the straw that broke the camel's back that day. So, okay, nothing for me to do here. I know that I reacted, and my thing that I need to work on is knowing that I'm enough. So, okay, I'll work on that. But
Yeah.
now I'm better because I separated those things out.
Yeah. And that's a great message, I think, to end this particular conversation on, is separating out that emotional. I love the way that you describe the lens, the contact lens, the fact from the color that we place on it.